Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. Up to 150 people are feared to have drowned in a shipwreck off the coast of Libya. Tunisia's first democratically elected president, Beji Caid Essebsi, dies. He was 92. We take a look back at his life. Help us. 6 kidnapped aid workers appear in a video urging Nigerian authorities to secure their freedom. Also in the program, tracking progress on disability. We meet the Kenyan Paralympic athlete overcoming every obstacle in her face to race for success on the track.
Sometimes as a person living with disability, you are robbed, or people may not even want to sit next to you in public thinking your condition is contagious.
And in sports, they are African champions, and now they are the biggest climbers in the latest FIFA rankings published today. Thanks for joining us in Focus on Africa from BBC World News. It might be the worst tragedy in the Mediterranean this year. That's the fear from the United Nations, as 150 people are feared dead following a shipwreck off the coast of Libya. Now, the wooden boat filled with mostly African migrants tipped over shortly after setting out from the Libyan town of Zuwara, west of Tripoli, with the aim of reaching Italy. Rescue operations are still going on, and almost 150 people have been saved. Well, let's get the very latest on this. I'm joined by Tariq Agaz, who is with the UNHCR. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on the program. What do we know about what exactly happened, Tariq?
Hello. So initial reports state that nearly 150 refugees and migrants have lost their lives after being involved in a shipwreck. Local fishermen spotted the boat early this morning and came to the rescue, while also calling the Libyan Coast Guards to come and assist in this rescue. So 147 people were rescued, while unfortunately nearly 150 people may have lost their lives. UNHCR and partners were at the disembarkation points providing humanitarian assistance and medical assistance, and some of the survivors had to be referred also to hospitals because their health situation was critical.
The city, it is quite dark right now. I wonder what the operations look like. Is it a rescue operation now? Is it a recovery operation? Do you know anything about that?
The reports that we got from our colleagues on the ground is that the rescued have been disembarked in 2 different disembarkation points in Homs area, which is 120 kilometers east of Tripoli. The rescue ended, but there were operations to try to find the missing people. Right now, as you said, it's getting dark, and I imagine they may suspend their activities until early tomorrow morning, but we are still waiting for additional reports from our colleagues on the ground on that.
Do you have any idea where the migrants are from?
Our initial reports say that a large number of people that were in this boat were Eritrean nationals, but we still don't have a clear breakdown of all the nationalities that were at that ship.
All right, so the UNHCR is describing this as one of the worst accidents. In your estimation, how serious is it?
I mean, it's definitely, during this 2019, we haven't seen these large numbers of loss of life in the Mediterranean. And we have called several times to urgently provide safe legal pathways for refugees to safety, so that they cannot, or they don't have to go through these very dangerous journeys. The number of people that are taking these boats from Libya and also arriving to Italy are decreasing if we compare this with the previous years. But this doesn't mean that these journeys are still occurring. People are still losing their lives at sea, and this is just unacceptable. We need more legal pathways to safety, so that these people don't have to set their foot on these boats.
All right, Tariq, Argas, thank you very much indeed for taking time to talk to us and bringing us up to speed with those developments. Thank you. Now, the president of Tunisia, Beji Caid Essebsi, has died. The 92-year-old was Tunisia's first democratically elected president. He'd been a prominent figure since the overthrow of Zine El Abidine Ben Ali in 2011, which sparked what became known as the Arab Spring. Well, today, an interim president, Mohamed Anasio, was sworn in, and the Electoral Commission announced that the next presidential election, which was originally set for November 17th, will now be held earlier. A state funeral for Essebsi will be held on Saturday. Celestina Olulode reports.
Prominent in politics for more than half a century, Beji Caid Essebsi's rise to power was sealed in 2014 when he became Tunisia's first freely elected president. Today, for many, Essebsi will be remembered as a major figure in Tunisia's transition to democracy after the Arab Spring. But his time in office was not an easy one. Mr. Essebsi was tainted by his involvement in the autocratic regimes of Zine Al Abidine Ben Ali and Habib Bourguiba, who aggressively cracked down on political opposition after independence. To his supporters, Essebsi was a liberal who failed to persuade Bourguiba's government to embrace political pluralism. But then, in 2014, at the age of 88, Essebsi showed he still had gritty political determination and energy when he fought to win the presidency, becoming Tunisia's first freely elected leader. Essebsi was a secularist, instrumental in forging a separation between politics and religion, and is credited for confronting Islamic extremists as well as Tunisia's dire economic problems. For some, his authoritarian approach to security represented a subtle return to the old guard, but there's no doubt he will be remembered as a major figure in the movement for change in Tunisia. Celestina Olulode, BBC News.
Now to Nigeria, where a video has been released showing 6 aid workers held hostage in an unknown location. The aid agency Action Against Hunger has identified the 5 men and 1 woman as staff of the charity. In the video, the only female hostage pleads for help from the Nigerian government and international communities. Well, Ishaq Khalid brings us the latest from Abuja. Ishaq, has the government responded to this plea?
Well, I've spoken with the government spokesperson, Garba Shehu, and he told me that negotiations are on with the abductors to secure the release of these 6 aid workers and other people that are being held captives by militants in northeastern Nigeria. But he has not told me details of the negotiations, but he says that they are hopeful that these aid workers will be released. But at the moment, many people are seeing this video as a kind of good news, because this is the first time that these aid workers have been seen since they were abducted last week. People are saying this is a proof of life, and then it's a kind of signal that the abductors are in a way willing to negotiate, and that the authorities should seize the opportunity to negotiate more and ensure the release of these aid workers. On the other hand, the Aid Against Hunger humanitarian organization for which these aid workers are working said that this video shows that apparently the captives are in a good condition of health, and they are also calling for their release. So the video has really echoed, brought to the fore the need for their release, and then the calls are still going on.
Ishaq, there's been a spate of kidnappings right across Nigeria and unrelated to Boko Haram. I wonder how the government has been dealing with this.
Well, exactly. The government is under pressure to ensure that the security situation generally improves. It has deployed troops, but there are a lot of kidnapping cases. People pay ransom, and the government is struggling to contain that. The pressure is quite huge on the government to ensure that the spate of kidnappings across Nigeria come to an end. This particular kidnapping by suspected Boko Haram militants in northeastern Nigeria has again brought to the fore the kind of security situation Nigeria is going through and the risks aid workers, in particular in northeastern Nigeria, face as they try to deliver aid to millions of people that are in need as a result of the Boko Haram conflict there.
All right, Ishaq Khalid for us in Abuja. Thank you. Let's now take a quick look at other stories making headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. The Sudanese army says it has arrested at least 16 active and retired military officers after foiling a military coup, which supposedly took place earlier this month. Now, those arrested include the former Foreign Minister Ali Kerti and former Vice President Bakri Hassan Salih. The world's biggest plane maker, Boeing, says it could temporarily halt production of its 737 MAX jet if it's grounded for much longer. The plane was taken out of service in March following 2 fatal crashes, one in Ethiopia, which claimed the lives of 346 people in total. The mayor of Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, has been flown out for treatment to Qatar. This follows Wednesday's bomb blast at his office, in which 7 people died. Others that were caught up in the attack have also been flown out for treatment. And the deputy mayor says a female suicide bomber was behind it. The BBC's Bella Shigo reports.
Burials for the latest victims of attacks in Mogadishu. The target, the office of the mayor and the headquarters of Mogadishu's local government. A suicide bomb attack killing 7 government officials, among them 2 female district commissioners.
I am currently standing in front of the grave of my older sister, the commissioner of Shangani district. My sister Zara was a lovely person, and she loved her people and she used to serve them. She was a hard worker and everyone who worked with her loved her.
Mogadishu's mayor Abdurrahman Omar Usman was one of the officials who were injured in the attack. He and the other injured officials have been airlifted to Qatar for further treatment. The government says it's investigating the attack.
We will know who was behind the explosion after the investigation. Government security agencies got samples, human body parts and CCTV camera footage that can help them to recognize the one who caused the explosion.
The militant Islamist group Al-Shabaab says it carried out the attack, hoping to target the new UN Special Envoy to Somalia, James Swan. He would meet for talks with the mayor earlier in the day before the blast occurred. Security has been tightened in many of the major streets in the capital. However, attacks like the one that targeted the mayor's office still continue to happen, and the residents are raising concerns. How could it happen in one of the most highly guarded and fortified areas in the capital? Bella Shego, BBC News, Mogadishu.
Well, joining me now in studio is Abdisalam Guled, the former Deputy Director of Somalia's National Intelligence and Security Agency, and also a security analyst. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on the program. The mayor is your friend. Have you heard from his people how he's doing?
He was doing better than expected this morning, and he'd been airlifted to and outside the country, and we're all wishing him to be, well.
Most people are asking whether right now Al-Shabaab's intelligence ability is outdoing the government's intelligence ability.
This is unprecedented. I mean, the place it happened and how it happened is unprecedented in Somali security, and it looks and shows how deep Al-Shabaab and dangerous penetrate the Somali security and government system. And if I give you a little bit background about this, the location where incidents have taken place, there's 4 layers of security barriers, checkpoints, barriers, and manned checkpoints. And finally, when you get to the building, you will go to security and screening machine, which no one go through without being checked. So my intake as a security analyst is there are A-level security, high-level security and clearance classified people managed to either smuggle this person, smuggle the bomb, if it was the bomb, and along the person, involve one person or more than that. And I think the Somali government need now to come up with something and get those who involved for this, because they still are large. The only one person could carry this bomb. But who assisted this person is still a lot, and government need to do something about it.
That is quite worrying, isn't it? So the question would be, can Al-Shabaab be beaten or defeated militarily?
That question is quite important, and it is quite difficult to answer. Al-Shabaab are among the Somalis. Yeah. They are very strong, and they've been proved to be sustaining their position for the last few years. Somali government, the currently serving government, has managed to, in certain level, to push on some certain levels, but it actually withdrew the area it was 2 years ago. So Al-Shabaab, it looks like they are militarily improving it. At the same time, they're infiltrating the government system. The drone with the international partners, especially the American drones, are actually doing it well when it comes to Al-Shabaab. They manage not to travel by a car, they travel not to be visible as they used to be, but that doesn't help the current security situation in Mogadishu.
All right, Abdisalam Guled, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts. Thank you. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come, we'll bring you all the latest on which African players are moving where in Europe's football transfer window. I'm Sophie Ikenye, and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Now, across Africa, people living with disabilities face huge challenges in their daily lives. And for those who also try to be successful athletes, the challenges can even be greater. In the fourth part of our week-long series on disability in Africa, we take a look at the story of one Paralympian from Kenya who's overcome every obstacle to succeed on the track. Celestine Karone reports.
Hannah Mwangi is a T12 athlete, a category for partially sighted athletes, and runs the 100, 200 and 400 meters. From a young age, she understood life was always going to be different.
Sometimes I feel treated like a person who's different because sometimes I do things which people don't understand. For example, when walking, I can hit objects on the road and some people judge me as being drunk early in the day.
Hannah earns money from being an athlete, but that is not enough, so she has to find an alternate source of income.
When I'm not competing or preparing to compete, I work in this pastry shop that I own and run. After training, this is where you'll find me till late in the evening. I really wanted to become a beautician, but I couldn't last 2 months because I struggled to get anything right. But here I can work on my pastry even without looking, and the design comes out just fine.
Africa will host its first ever continental parasport competition early next year, and Kenya is expected to do really well despite the lack of support.
Our events come once in a while, and the main sponsor is government, and like our last trip in Marrakech, Morocco, we earned very little money compared to what we spend on training, and this money came late.
In May this year, a group of Paralympic athletes took their pay dispute to the Ministry of Sport. Some found themselves fighting the police. Financial issues could be eased after the Kenyan government set up a sports fund last year, but it only became operational in January this year. And for the first time, there's a kitty set aside to directly fund parasports. Most of the money in the fund is from taxing betting companies. But that's not Hannah's only problem.
In Kenya, there's little consideration for people living with disability. Public transport isn't suited for people with wheelchairs, and sometimes as a person living with disability, you are robbed, or people may not even want to sit next to you in public, thinking your condition is contagious.
The Kenyan Constitution recognizes disability rights, which provides a tax exemption as well as the social welfare allowance to help those living with disability. But very few receive this allowance, making life a daily struggle for disabled people like Hannah.
Celestina Karone reporting there. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. It's time now for some sport.
Many thanks, Sophie. Now, newly crowned African champions Algeria are the biggest climbers in the latest FIFA rankings published today. The Desert Foxes, who beat Senegal to lift the Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt last week, moved up 28 places on July's list to go to 40th in the world and 4th in Africa. Senegal retained top spot on the continent, moving up 2 places to reach 20th in the world, their best ever ranking. Nigeria, who won bronze in Egypt, went up 12 places to 33rd on the global list and 3rd in Africa. Tunisia, the other semi-finalists at the Nations Cup, were 2nd in Africa behind Senegal, but moved down 4 places to 29th in the world. Belgium remained top of the global standings, followed by Brazil, France and England. Now, some bad news for Ivory Coast and Manchester United fans. Injury-plagued defender Eric Bailly appears to have suffered another major setback after he was stretchered off in today's pre-season friendly against Tottenham Hotspur. The 25-year-old was restricted to just 18 appearances in all competitions last season and has suffered serious ankle and knee injuries since his move to Old Trafford 3 years ago. His manager says this time it's his knee. Now, some transfer news. Ghana forward Jordan Ayew has signed a permanent deal with Premier League side Crystal Palace. Ayew spent last season on loan at Selhurst Park following Swansea's relegation from the Premier League. The fee is thought to be around £2.5 million with add-ons for the Ghana international, who scored twice in 25 appearances for Palace last season. The 58-cap international signed for Swansea from Aston Villa in January 2017. Watford have signed Tom Dele-Bashiru on a 6-year deal after his contract expired at Manchester City. The central midfielder made 1 appearance for the Premier League champions in the Carabao Cup in 2017. Dele-Bashiru has represented both England and Nigeria at youth level and scored for the Super Eagles in May's Under-20 World Cup against Qatar. Equatorial Guinea international Pedro Obiang has left West Ham to join Serie A side Sassuolo for a reported $10 million fee. The 27-year-old joined the Hammers from Sampdoria in 2015 and played 116 games for them, scoring 3 goals. And Cameroon forward Clinton Njie has joined Russian giants Dynamo Moscow on a 4-year deal in a bid to resurrect his career. The 25-year-old joined French side Marseille in August 2016, but only played 18 games, scoring 3 goals. And finally, Sunday Chizamga has resigned as Zimbabwe's national team coach. The 67-year-old guided the Warriors to the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt, where they went out at the group stages. Sophie, you're all up to speed with your sports.
Thank you, Peter, but don't go too far because I think you might like this next story. Now, if you get lost in the Nigerian city of Lagos, don't panic, because Google Maps has introduced a voice guide with a Nigerian accent. It follows similar moves in Ghana and Rwanda, but what do locals think?
Take the first exit onto Awolowo Road. Continue on Alfred Riwani Road for 1.5 kilometers.
The Nigerian accent on that Google map is much more better than the white accent.
When I heard it, I was very happy and the voice is clear.
For the white accents, if you're not that learned, you won't be able to hear what the lady is saying because she doesn't pronounce the Yoruba names correctly.
The other one, the Oyibo voice, that one we call Adeshala or something. You won't hear it clearly. But now the Nigerian voice are in fact so wonderful.
The Oyibo accent is just that should be the Akpongbo that Oyibo will pronounce will be like Akpongbo or Ojuelegba, something like that. But with the Nigerian accent, you hear it clearly, Ojuelegba or Akpongbo.
There's 9-minute congestion on Alfred Riwani Road in 50 meters. You are still on the fastest route.
I love it. Well, don't forget you can get in touch with me and the rest of the team. I'm on Twitter @Sikenye. That's Focus on Africa for now. Thanks for your company. Bye.